We're going to review expanded form when we're working with whole numbers and now when we're working with decimals. So let's look at this number 5,467. If I look at my 5, I know that that's really 5,000. The other way I can write that is that it's the same thing as saying 5 times 1,000. So I'm breaking it apart to really show the place value that each number is in. The 4 is really in the hundreds place, so plus 400, which I can also write as plus 4 times 100. The 6 is in my tens place, so I can write that as a 60, or 6 times 10. And my 7 is in my ones place, so I can just write that as a 7. I don't have to say times 1, because we know what place value it's already in. When you're doing expanded form with decimals, you're following the same exact rules as we did with whole numbers. I'm still going to start with my first place value, and that's the 3, which is in the hundreds place. So I'm going to do 300, or 3 times 100. That 2 is in the tens place, so it's really a 20, which is the same as 2 times 10. The 4 is in the ones place, so I just write plus 4. And now I get to my decimal. So if I look at where that 5 is, I know that that 5 is in my first place value after the decimal. So thinking about my place value chart, I know that that's the 10th spot. If I was to color that in on a grid, that would be 5 out of 10, 5 tenths. So I could write it as a fraction instead of a decimal. What does that look like when I really put it into expanded form? Well, I still have my 5, but now my place value isn't my 10, it's 1/10 because I have a part of a whole number. So let's take a look at this one. I'll start with my 2, which is my 20, so I'm going to write 2 times 10 because the end goal is to be able to write it like this without having to write the 20 and then the 5. So the 2 is 2 times 10 because it's in my 10 spot. Then with my 5, it's in my 1 spot, so I write 5. When I get to that 8, I think again about my place value for decimals, and I know that that is the same as 8 tenths because it's in my 10th spot, so I'm going to write that as 8 times 1/10. Now when I look at this 7, I can think to myself, well, what place value is that? It goes tenths, then hundredths, so that has to be 7 out of 100. So when I write that in expanded form, it looks like this, 7 times 1/100. Now my decimal's getting a little longer, but you're still using the same strategies. I'm going to start with my 6, which is just a 6. Then I'm going to move to this 9, and I can think to myself, well, it's in the 10th spot, so it's 9/10. So when I write it in expanded form, I say plus 9 times 1/10. When I look at my 2, I know that's in my hundredth spot, so it's like saying 2/100. So when I write that in expanded form, I do plus 2 times 1/100. And my last place is this 3. So I know it goes tenths, then hundredths, and after that I get to my thousandths place, which means that I took something and broke it into 1,000 pieces. So that 3 is really 3 pieces out of 1,000. So when I write it in expanded form, I do plus 3 times 1/1000. So really all expanded form is doing is it takes the digit and then uses powers of 10 to show me the place value. So that if I needed to put it back together, I could say that 3 times 100 is 300, 2 times 10 is 20, then the 4. Now that I see a fraction, I know I have a decimal point, then 4 tenths would go here, 6 hundredths, and then 8 thousandths. Expanded form just gives me a way of organizing my place values to show that I really understand where every digit is.